Alright, hey guys, this is Mr. Holly. We're going to do a short summary of simple interest today. I'm giving you the answers to your worksheet, but in addition to that, I'm going to kind of go over the idea of simple interest. In the real world, interest can be calculated different ways. Most of the time, it is continually compounding, and it's a more difficult type of equation for us to look at. That's not something we can do in here. But in just the simplest understanding of interest, we look at interest as principal times rate times time. Meaning, if you put some money in the bank, that's your principal, you would get some interest rate. And then it would multiply by that rate every year. So if it's 1 year, it's principal times the rate, so like 5% or whatever. 5% of your money times 1 year. 5% times 2 years. 5% times 3 years. So every year it increases by whatever that rate is. 5, 3, 2%, whatever. Okay, so all of that is labeled on the worksheet that you can find in Canvas. And you guys are supposed to be completing this worksheet. Now, most of the problems are relatively easy in that they're going to give you principal, rate, and time. If you multiply these together, you will find the amount of interest. But some of these questions may leave one of these variables out. And in that case, we'll have to solve for principal, rate, or time. And that's very possible. Anytime we have just one variable, we can solve the equation. So let's go through and let's take a peek. We're looking at these problems, number 1. And on the first one here, I'm just going to label everything for us. A bank is offering 2.5% simple interest. So R is equal to 2.5%. I'd actually probably write that as 0.025 because we're going to put it as a decimal. If you deposit $5,000, so that's your principal, $5,000. How much interest would you earn in 1 year? So we have a time frame as well. Time is 1. So I'm going to grab my calculator. Well, actually, I want to write this out as an equation. And I'm going to put interest is equal to principal times rate times time. And I'm just going to input these numbers in for the variables. Interest is equal to $5,000 times 2.5% times 1 year. So we're really not multiplying by anything. We can put times 1 there. And what is 2.5% of 5,000? And that is $125. So $125 would be our interest on a $5,000 deposit, 2.5% for 1 year. All right, let's look at the next one. To buy a car, Jessica borrowed $15,000 for 3 years at an annual simple interest rate of 9%. How much interest will she pay if she pays the entire loan off at the end of the 3rd year? And what is the total amount? So the total amount is going to be the principal that she borrowed plus the interest that she owes. So let's look at this. Interest equals principal times rate times time. The interest is going to be equal to a principal of $15,000 times 9% times 3 years. So I can just put that in my calculator. 15,000 times 9% times 3 years. She is going to owe $4,050 interest, which means her total price is going to be $15,000, her initial price, plus the interest, and she would owe $19,050. That's how much she paid in total for her car. That is the car plus interest. That answers the second question. All right, number 3. Nancy invested $6,000 in a bond at a yearly rate of 3%. She earned $450 in interest. How long was the money invested? So we should, by reading this question, we should be able to identify what we're looking for here. Obviously, we're looking for how long, which is time. Okay, so interest equals PRT, and we know that her interest was $450. The principal was $6,000, and the rate was 3%, and we're solving for T. So I'm going to do 6,000 times 0.03, and I'm going to simplify this to 180 T. I multiplied these out, now I've got 180 T. Now let's divide by 180. And that, obviously, anytime I divide by the coefficient, it gives me just the variable isolated by itself. So 450 divided by 180 is going to be 2.5. That means her amount of money stayed in the bank for 2.5 years. So 2.5 years. All right, number 4. Mr. Johnson borrowed $8,000 for 4 years to make home improvements. If the total he repaid $10,320, at what interest rate did he borrow the money? So the first thing we would need to figure out is $10,320. If we subtract the initial $8,000, he paid interest of $2,320. Yeah, that's his interest. So interest equals PRT. Interest is $2,320. Principal was $8,000. The rate we don't know, and the time was 4 years. So I can go ahead and commutative property of multiplication, multiply in any order. That's going to be 32,000 times some rate R is equal to 2,320. Divide by the coefficient, so dividing by 32,000. Divide by 32,000. And R is equal to 2,320 divided by 32,000. And on your calculator, you're going to see a decimal value of 725 thousandths, 10 thousandths. If I were to convert this to a percentage, that would be 7.25%. All right, let's check out number 5. John's parents deposited $1,000 into his savings account as a college fund when he was born. How much will John have after 18 years at 3.25%? Interest equals, started with 1,000 is our principal, and our rate is 3.25%, so 0.0325, and our time is 18 years. So multiply those together, and we get $585. Interest equals $585. Next, question 6. To buy a laptop computer, Elaine borrowed $2,000 for 3 years at an interest rate of 5%. All right. $2,000, 5%, 3 years. That's going to be $300. All right, so there you go, $300 in interest. I think it asked what did she end up paying in total. Well, she borrowed $2,000 and she had $300 interest, so it's going to be $2,300 in total. Number 7, TJ invested $4,000 in a bond at a yearly rate of 2%. He earned $200 interest. What was the time? So 7 200 is our interest, 4,000 is our principal, 2% is our rate. Now we need to solve for t. Again, the first step is to simplify on the right side, so 4,000 times 200 is going to be 80. 200 is equal to 80t. If I divide both sides by 80 to isolate the variable of time, time is equal to 2.5 again, so the answer again is 2.5 years on this one. All right, 8. Mr. Mogi borrowed $9,000 for 10 years to make home improvements. He repaid $20,000. At what interest rate did he borrow the money? So he ended up paying $11,000 interest on a $9,000 loan that he borrowed for 10 years. So R times 10. 10 years, right? Okay. Now, 11,000 is equal to, if I simplify this side, that's going to be 90,000 R. 9,000 times 10 years is 90,000. And the rate here, to find that, we're just going to divide by 90,000. And we get the rate is equal to 12.2 repeated percent. On to question 9. Are we on time? Oh, we're going to fit it in. Okay, Bertha deposited $1,000 into a retirement account when she was 18. How much money will Bertha have after 50 years, 7.5% interest? So, $1,000, 7.5%, 50 years. So 50 times 1,000, that's 50,000. Times 7.5%. She will have $3,750. All right, number 10, last one. Joshua borrowed $1,000 from his friend and paid him back $1,050 in 6 months. Ooh, this one is good. He paid $50 interest. He borrowed $1,000. We want to know what the rate is, but the real question here is what was the time? Because we have looked at time, every time we do this, we're talking about time in years, and we have to talk about it in years because the interest rates that we're talking about are annual interest rates. So this is this much percent per year. But in this case, he only borrowed it for 6 months. So what was the time frame that he borrowed it? Well, 6 months is 1/2 of a year. So he only had it for 1/2 of a year. So simplify. We won't need a calculator. 1,000 times 1/2 is 500 R. Divide both sides by 500 to solve for R. And the rate is 500 divided by, or 50 divided by 500 is 10%. All right, guys. This one is a key question for you because it is important to understand that whenever we talk about interest, if we're talking about it in terms of months, like you might get a question where like somebody had a credit card and they left the balance for 3 months. Well, you have to realize that you can't put 3 for time. Time is in years, so that would be like 1/4 of a year, or each month accounts for 1/12 of a year. So that is a key example for you to check on number 10 there. So, all right, guys, have a good day. Hope this helps.